Hello, everybody, and welcome to the free webinar of the Yacht Broker Masterclass. Glad to have so many people along. We've already got a few people joined. As usual, I would ask you to let me know if you can't hear me, if my mouth is just moving and you're not hearing anything. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Feel free to ask any questions that you want to at all. I'll do my best to answer you. And as usual, I'll just explain that I've done quite a few live streams with YouTube channels in the past. I've tried to do things in a very fancy manner with all kinds of camera angles in a studio. They seldom work. And so the simplicity of this webinar is just me opening my laptop and talking to you. The reason I do that is it's just the most reliable method for communicating in a webinar. We've had over 200 people so far sign up to the free webinars. Some have actually been here during the webinar. I've asked lots of questions. Other people have watched afterwards. But it tells me that there's a big interest in the yacht brokerage industry from many people who may want one day to be a yacht broker, or who imminently want to become a yacht broker, or who are just curious about what yacht brokers do. And it's great to see that level of interest. Something that I particularly noticed last week, which was our first ever webinar, was that people were tuning in from all over the world. We had one individual from Pakistan, we had somebody from the Canadian Rockies, we had somebody else from South Africa. And so what I'd like to do in this webinar is first of all talk about the actual issue of getting into the brokerage industry. We'll cover that just for a few minutes with a few of the basics of it, especially for people who live outside of areas where there are super yachts. Then I've made a note of a few questions, or a couple of questions, 3 questions actually, that were asked last week that we didn't have time to answer. So I'm going to go into those questions afterwards. And then please feel free to ask me for any details that you want. If I can answer, I'll be very happy to. If I can't, I'll make a note and I'll answer in the following webinar. But let's start with that issue of people who live far afield. It's actually relatively easy to be a yacht broker if you live in the south of France, in Palma de Mallorca, in Barcelona, Fort Lauderdale, because there's lots of yachts, and where there are yachts, there are yacht owners. They may not always live in the area where their yacht is, but they'll go there from time to time. And one of the big advantages of that is that when those yacht owners are visiting their yachts, they've got yachts on their mind. In other words, they're no longer concerned with an acquisition of another company, or of expanding their own business, or of family issues that are going on. They're in the south of France to enjoy themselves, to relax, and to be on their yacht. And that's a great time to be in contact with yacht owners, because it's the time they want to be thinking about either selling what they already have, or buying something new, or both. And obviously, as a yacht broker, that's the frame of mind that you want to be talking to an owner when they're in that frame of mind. It's very difficult to do if you're in the places I just mentioned: Pakistan, Canadian Rockies, South Africa. There's a very big yachting culture, but there's not a lot of super yachts in South Africa. And that's why a lot of people, particularly from South Africa and also from Canada, will move to areas where there are yachts. And that's really pretty much essential. That might sound like an obvious statement, but I do believe that there's a lot of people watching this webinar who may hope to be able to work as a yacht broker remotely. Whilst that's not impossible, it's very difficult to do that, particularly if you live in an area that's actually very difficult to get to a place where there's yachts. Having said that, for many people, it's not just a question of moving to the south of France or to another yachting hub and applying for a job as a yacht broker. It's quite a long long journey that's necessary for most to go from one job to being a yacht broker. And so my advice for people watching this webinar who live far afield and who want to get into the industry is, first of all, see if you can find another job, at least in the area. If you work, for example, delivering molten brown products to super yachts, or for a famous, I don't know why it came to mind, but there's a famous company that cleans carpets. I think they're called Internet, strangely enough, but they clean the carpets on super yachts. sometimes you need to just do some job that you can get in order to get on the yachts, to meet the crew, to meet the captains, to start your networking, because networking is such an important part of being a yacht broker. Now, there are exceptions to that. I know of yacht brokers who've come from the financing industry, for example, where they already had a fantastic network of clients. They already knew yacht owners. And so for them, the journey to become a yacht broker was one easy step. But for most people, that's not the case. For most people who want to get into the industry, they might have been car salesmen in Manchester or furniture salespeople in Michigan. And it's absolutely understandable that they want to become yacht brokers, but realistically, it's not an easy one-step process. You need to, first of all, get to a place where there are yachts and then get some job in the yachting industry. To be really brutally honest, no yacht brokerage is going to take you on if you don't even know a single yacht owner, if you're still learning about yachts. So you need to build up your career. And the best way to do that is to get into some business that puts you in contact with yachts. Crew uniform, for example, selling crew uniform, delivering crew uniform. There are so many businesses that circle the yachting industry that allow you to just get your foot in the door and to start making your contacts. I wanted to make that point because it really did surprise me how many people were watching the webinar from areas where there's no particular yachting industry as such. And I don't want to discourage people from those areas from becoming yacht brokers. Absolutely no reason at all that you can't become a yacht broker. But probably the journey will be a little bit longer for you because you need, first of all, to immerse yourself in the right area with the right people. Now, we had at the end of last week's, it was 2 weeks, the last webinar that we did, we had some really interesting questions and there just wasn't time to answer them. One came from Ian Smith. Now, Ian's been in contact with me a few times, and Ian, if you're on this webinar, I really appreciate the feedback that you've given to me and the communication that we've had. And Ian said, can you become a member of MEBA or EBA before becoming a broker? Now, for those of you that don't know, MEBA is the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association. It's also known as the Worldwide Yachting Association because they operate far beyond just the Mediterranean. EBA, on the other hand, is the International Yacht Brokers Association, and it's more centered in the United States. In Fort Lauderdale is where their head office is. But both those organizations overlap. They both have international presence. The simple answer to your question, can you become a member before becoming a broker, is no, you can't. You have to be a yacht broker to be a member. MEBA is an interesting one, and I know MEBA a lot better than I know EBA. Not being a MEBA member, if you're a sales broker, absolutely doesn't stop you from being a sales broker. I'm not a MEBA member. Northrop & Johnson, with whom I'm contracted, are members, and I benefit from that. But I personally am not a MEBA member. But that doesn't stop me from getting the MEBA contract, for example, the sales and purchase contract, when I sell a yacht. It's a well-accepted contract. We actually go through it line by line in the masterclass. So not being a member doesn't stop me from being a yacht broker. However, if I wanted to be a charter broker, it would be very difficult indeed if I were not a MEBA member. And that's because MEBA has an online system called Yachtfolio, and just about every yacht in the world that's available for charter is on Yachtfolio, and it's updated, and only MEBA members can have access to Yachtfolio. It's updated daily where the yachts are, what their availability is, who the captain is, because as you can imagine, captains and crew change. So you can get the crew profiles, you can make reservations, you can find out who the actual charter manager is. It's a fantastic system. And because I personally have never wanted to be a charter broker, I've always been a sales broker, MEBA has not been of such a high priority to me. I've been able to operate perfectly well without being a member. So long answer to a short question, you can't be a member if you're not a broker. If you want to be a sales broker, being a member is not essential. And actually, I'll go into a lot more detail on that in the Yacht Broker Masterclass itself. And MIBA especially is a lot more important if you want to be a charter broker than it is if you want to be a sales broker. We also had a question from Ashley Arzik. And Ashley said, yacht selling is important, but what do you think about marina capacity increases, especially for mega yachts? How can we clearly understand mega yachts' needs? It's a really good question, because I remember years ago when I first became a yacht broker, it was 2006, and marina capacity was a real issue. We at the time, it was immediately before the world financial crash of 2008. People were still very wealthy, and actually those were probably the golden years for selling yachts, right up until post-COVID, which became amazing years for selling yachts, strangely enough. But they were great years, the early 2000s, for selling yachts. And the big issue that came up was, I would buy it, I don't know where to put it. Then the financial crash happened in 2008. The yachts industry across the board took a massive hit. There were huge names that either went bankrupt or were close to bankruptcy, real turmoil for a number of years. And as we came out of that turmoil, I've never heard the problem of availability of berths cropping up again as an issue. Now, that might just be my perception, but I think it's probably the perception of many people. There's been some significant marina developments. Locally here to Monaco, we have the Cala del Forte Marina in Ventimiglia, but there's been others as well. But added to that, people are looking now further afield at destinations. Croatia, for example, is becoming more and more popular, but also destinations like Norway. People are enjoying taking their yachts up north. Fantastic surge in explorer yachts. The explorer yacht market is absolutely on fire, and I think it will be for a long time. Long may it continue, because that's, in my opinion, the very best use of a yacht, is to explore the world, to have a great itinerary, to go to places you've never been to before. And so some of the world's fleet of yachts happily are going away from the traditional areas, such as the south of France. And so marina capacity, in answer to your question, is not such an issue as it once was. Clearly understanding mega yachts' needs. Mega yachts' needs are very similar to any other yacht's needs. You need to be able to get to good service areas. You need clean fuel. You may or may not know this. It's one of those things I kind of take for granted, but the first time I heard it, I was surprised. A lot of marinas throughout the world supply dirty fuel, or fuel that has a lot of water in it, and it can be absolutely catastrophic, actually, for yachts. So they'll have a series of filters on the yachts, Alpha Laval fuel cleaning systems, to get over that particular problem. And so we're seeing now the more far-flung areas are having investments put into them slowly but surely, to also have the infrastructure of nice marinas with clean fuel and good service areas. Hope that answers that question. And Ashley, I don't know if you're on this webinar or not, but I hope you hear the recording and you can hear that answer to your question. Final question from the last webinar was a really interesting one, and it was heartwarming as well, from Yacht Travel. Hello from Ukraine. Hello right back to you, Yacht Travel. There's a difference in selling mass market yachts and luxury yachts. You're talking mostly about luxury yacht sales. What is the yacht price that splits these markets? It's a very big question to answer, and I'll give you my take on it as I see it. Most yachts are luxury. It's kind of what a yacht is. It's a luxury vessel which you can travel. I think one of the qualifiers to be a yacht is you have to be able to sleep on it, so it has to have a cabin, but luxury kind of goes along with it. That said, it's one thing to buy a Jeannot or a Beneteau sailing yacht, which is very nice, very luxurious, but it is mass produced, or a Sea Ray. The amount of boats that Sea Ray are producing, yachts that they're producing, is astronomical. It really is a mass market. And I remember one of the first times I ever went to the United States, I was in a shopping mall in Fort Lauderdale called the Galleria, and they had a Sea Ray in the shopping mall, and there was a big sign on it saying easy payments of however many hundred or however many $1,000 a month. It blew me away that you could go into a shopping mall and buy a small yacht with easy payments. And that clearly is not what I'm talking about when I talk about yacht brokerage. It's true as well that I wouldn't call them mass production, but I call them production yachts. It's a different world as well. So when I'm talking about production yachts, I'm talking about Ferretti, Azimuth, Sunseeker, San Lorenzo, Princess. There's so many of them, and they're making yachts out of a mold. You literally have a mold, they lay up the hull inside, the hull comes out of the mold, the superstructure comes out of another one, and they're cookie cutter yachts. They are super luxurious. I mean, they are beautiful yachts. But production yachts have a very different sales technique. And again, the actual masterclass goes into quite some detail on this subject, because Ferretti, Sunseeker, Pershing, Azimuth, Riva, they have a dealer network, and the dealers are obligated to sell that brand. If you are a Ferretti dealer and your client comes to you, what they actually want is an Azimuth, they come, they see the Ferretti, they go, you know what, I prefer the Azimuth. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to sell it to them. And if you do sell it to them, the company that you work for is not going to be particularly happy about it. And you may well lose your dealership because they want you to promote their brand. And so the good side of that is that it's a very profitable business to be in. If I'm the Ferretti dealer in the south of France, I've got, and somebody wants to buy a Ferretti and keep it in the south of France, they have to come to me. They have to. And so on the one hand, I have to work hard to keep Ferretti happy with me. But on the other hand, what a business model. To be a Sunseeker dealer in the Balearics, to be a Ferretti dealer in Puerto Banús, where there's a lot of Ferrettis, is a fantastic business. You have to work hard because otherwise you'll lose your dealership. But it's a different thing to brokerage. A broker has much more freedom to present different products to his clients. So continuing that particular theme, because it's really important to understand this. If I have a client and they say to me, David, I've never bought a used anything in my life. I built my house new. I only buy new cars. I only have new jets. So I want a brand new Ferretti. I'm obligated to go to the Ferretti dealer to do that particular deal, and I'll then work out a commission split with the Ferretti dealer. However, I'm also free. I have the freedom to say, Mr. Client, that's great. Here are all the details. Did you know that San Lorenzo have a similar product, by the way? And did you know that it has this, that, and the other that Ferretti doesn't have? Hey, by the way, I'm not saying San Lorenzo is better than Ferretti. I'm sure you understand my point. My point is that I, as a broker, I'm free to offer to my clients whatever I think is the best for him. As a dealer, you don't have that freedom. You have to offer the products of the company that you're tied to. So that's the three questions that I had from the last time. I just want to see if there's any questions coming in. I see Khalil Bethel. It's a cool name. Thanks for hosting this. I'm in the yachting industry and I've always wanted to know how the process surrounding brokerage works. Appreciate you and appreciate this. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ocean Man, helpful. Thanks. Sophia A, insightful. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions at the moment, and I'm worried that that may be because my questions part is blocked. So if somebody can just leave me a comment so that I can see that it's working. What I'll do is yes, it says, okay, questions in, great, it is working. Ocean Man, where would you, thank you, Leonardo. Leonardo also says hello to let me know that the comment section's working. Where would you source clients? It really depends on your personal story that you have. I mentioned earlier the example of one broker who was in the finance industry, and specifically he was in financing yachts. And so can you imagine in that time the amount of yacht owners that he was dealing with? And without going into too many details, it enraged many yacht brokers who had dealt with him for finance, because then he became a yacht broker. And so they, I guess, regretted ever having put him in contact with their clients. But that was his personal story and, his issue to sort out how he got his clients. A lot of crew get into the industry, and particularly captains tend to go on to be very, very successful yacht brokers because they bring something to the party that's really of great value. They understand the nuances and the intricacies of dealing with a yacht owner. They have a fantastic knowledge of the actual workings of a yacht. And so they already have some client base, especially if they've been the captain of a charter yacht, because that will have put them in contact with a lot of wealthy people who charter but could afford to buy. Again, they always have the uncomfortable challenge of the brokers that they've worked with regretting ever having put their clients in contact with them. But, frankly, that's business, I'm afraid. And I know my opinion on this is not popular amongst older brokers who have a more traditional outlook. But my honest opinion is that it's the client who decides whose client is going to be. And if I sell a yacht to my client today and we close the deal and he sails off into the sunset, that's where the transaction ends. He's been my client for that transaction. He's now free to do business with whomever he likes when he comes to sell the yacht. And if he doesn't sell it through me, I've got nobody but myself to blame for not keeping in contact with him. So it's a competitive business because a yacht owner will be in contact with multiple different brokers and captains and surveyors and people who come on to become brokers. And again, I don't want to harp on too much about the masterclass, but something I go into on a lot of detail is the importance of relationships and maintaining those relationships, because your client is free to deal with whoever they like. So if you don't keep that relationship strong, you only have yourself to blame when they go somewhere else. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent there, but it was a good tangent. Patrick Abbas dialed in a bit late, was watching the World Cup. How dare you? How dare you? I forgot it's the World Cup today. I enjoy watching rugby, but I wouldn't call myself a big rugby fan. Edward Jennings. Hi, David. Thanks for hosting this. I appreciate it. I'm based in London and I'm graduating next summer. I was wondering if you had any advice on breaking into the industry. So, Edward, after this webinar, take a look in the description below. There's a whole, there's a link to a whole playlist of videos that I recorded a few years ago. I look a lot younger, I have to say, when I recorded them, but the information is still very valid. It's called Breaking into Brokerage, and it's quite an extensive amount of videos that discuss exactly that subject. We started this webinar talking about the importance of where you are. London is a good place to be because not only are there a lot of yacht owners who live in London, but there are a lot of yacht owners who pass through London. And if you know the right clubs to go to, restaurants to go to, if you can socialize, and Edward, I don't know your personal circumstances, but if your circumstances are such that you can socialize with yacht owners, I know a lot of very wealthy English brokers who go shooting with, shooting ducks, or I don't know what they shoot, but they go shooting. I've never been in that life at all, but they have a lot of success by socializing with yacht owners, as I say, shooting, playing polo, all that kind of good stuff that goes in London. It's a life that I've never lived at all, but others do, and they have a lot of success. And the great thing with London is it's a great spot to fly in and out of. There's there are a lot of very, very successful yacht brokers who live in London, but they're backwards and forwards all the time. I'd usually try not to mention names, but actually in this circumstance, I don't see any reason why not. Will Christie is one of the world's most successful brokers. I bumped into him the other day. He'd flown in to Monaco in the morning. He was flying back to London in the evening. It was a long day for him. but it works for him. It works very, very well. Edward, I hope that's enough. I would advise you, since you're graduating next summer, to not jump in with both feet. Don't make any big commitments. Listen to that breaking into brokerage sequence of free videos. Keep tuning into the webinar. If it's something that you decide that you want to do, I'd recommend the masterclass, because it's a really in-depth explanation of everything you need to know to be a yacht broker. PFP69 has retracted a message. Now I want to know what the message was. PFP69. Ocean Man, interesting. Thanks. Hendrix Brick Design. I'm curious, is that yacht design or other kind of design? Hello, David. Thanks for doing this webinar. Do you have any tips for finding a sales broker job at next week Cannes Yachting Festival? Hendrik, come to the Cannes Yachting Festival. Absolutely. Feel free to drop me a message through this YouTube channel. On LinkedIn is probably the best way. You'll easily find me on LinkedIn. And I'd be very happy to meet up with you at Cannes and give you a bit of advice if I possibly can. Nobody will employ a sales broker just for the yachting festival. It's a long-term career rather than a short-term job. And to be honest, you probably left it a little late now for Cannes as well, because it's next week and everybody has their arrangements. But I say come to Cannes Yachting Festival because so much of this business is about networking, and Cannes is one of the most important events of the year for networking. You'll meet other brokers, designers, manufacturers. Make the most of your time there. Try to meet people, and I'm assuming that you want to learn about the industry. I don't know if you're already a yacht designer, already know the industry well, but if you don't, what a great opportunity to get to know the industry better. Pierpaolo Perugino, well done, David. I'm in navigation to Italy and following your webinar on the phone. Well, thank you very much, Pierpaolo. I'm guessing that you're probably a captain or crew, and one of the kinds of people I had in mind for the Yacht Broker Masterclass, because crew generally have such a great knowledge of the industry anyway, and of course of yachts. It's a relatively easy step to then become a broker. And safe navigation, Pierpaolo. Ocean Man. So I've already started working in the industry in sales, but from the shipyard side, it's kind of like the dealership example you've mentioned. Looking forward to networking my first Monaco Yacht Show soon. Yeah, Ocean Man, feel free to contact me. I'd be very happy to meet you at the Monaco Yacht Show. And yeah, I'm curious what you mean by that, but from the shipyard side. When I first got into the sales part of the industry, I was working for Ferretti Yachts, and specifically for the CRN shipyard. Back then, CRN were building all of the custom line yachts, and so I was more involved with custom line, and I loved it. I want to give you a bit of advice that was given to me by a very, very wealthy individual when I became a yacht broker, and I'd worked for the shipyard. And he said to me, David, don't think people are going to want to talk to you when you become a broker as much as they do when you work for the shipyard. He said that business card with the CRN custom line logo on it opens so many doors to you. And he was right. I mean, thankfully, I was able to make it nonetheless. But when you work for a shipyard, of course, people want to talk to you. Of course, yacht owners want to talk to you. They're going direct to you because you represent the shipyard. When you become a broker, they're a little bit more cautious about the whole thing. Just want to put that word of warning out there. You have to work. I'm not saying you don't work hard. I'm sure you work very hard, but you have to work harder. It's more challenging when you become a broker than when you're a shipyard rep. I think that probably makes sense, actually. Nicola Disardo. Hi, David. Thank you for this webinar. So interesting. What about the possibilities to become a broker starting from the role as project manager in a shipyard? I know people who have done that, Nicola, and I think it's a great and logical step to take. Again, I'm going to come back to what I said earlier, and I don't want to discourage anybody at all. Often if you're a project manager, a broker has introduced you to their client. And so that uncomfortable scenario is that your first client may be the clients that a broker has introduced you to give you the project manager work. So that's uncomfortable. That said, and again, I go into some detail on this in the masterclass. But that said, I know more than one person who does both. They're project manager and they're a broker. And that can work very, very well, because if you don't just broker the deal but of a new construction yacht, but you also project manage it, you're giving so much value to your clients. Be aware that the client will probably not want to pay you twice. If they know that you're making a very good commission on the sale of the yachts, and then you want to project manage it and you want to be paid well for that, you probably will get a big kickback in the sense of resistance from the client. So there's a lot of factors, but in answer to your question about the possibility of becoming a broker when you start as a project manager, no reason why not. It's an excellent route to becoming a yacht broker. Leonardo said, I'll be in Cannes on Tuesday. Hope to see you around. Leonardo, drop me a message. You've got my number, I think, actually, on WhatsApp. So drop me a WhatsApp. I'll be around Tuesday, probably late afternoon. Anyway, drop me a message. I'd love to meet up with you. Hendrix Brick Design. Thanks, David. Yes, I'm a beginning yacht designer and now searching for a yacht broker before becoming a designer. I will contact you through LinkedIn. Yes, do that. I'd love to meet up with you. Ocean Man, yeah, I'm in the sales department, so I've got that shiny business card. It's the way I started. It's a great way to start. It's a great way to start. I try to be fairly transparent about my career, because there are yacht brokers a lot more successful than me. You know, I've done well. I've had some fantastic moments. I've had some awful moments. But I want to pass on to you one of the biggest mistakes I made, and it was a really dumb mistake. I didn't keep in contact with all of those people that I met over 10 years at Ferretti Group, meeting a lot of people. I kept in contact with some. I've done business with some. It's been good, but I wish I'd have written down the number and the email address of every single person I'd ever met and worked that database. When I look at the world's most successful yacht brokers, one of the things that they all have in common is that they have that black book that they keep updating. They never lose an address. So it sounds to me, Ocean Man, that you're in a great position, and I'd really encourage you to do that. To if you can, keep a note of everybody that you're meeting. I might upset a few yacht builders by saying that, but it's business. You know, you meet people, you build relationships, and it's the relationships that will see you through. People don't really have a relationship with a brand. They might have a loyalty to the brand, but that loyalty can be easily broken. They really like the people in a shipyard, and I've known many people who've gone on to have a great career because they've been efficient, reliable, knowledgeable, competent, and well, you know what I'm saying. So, you know, keep those relationships strong. Pier Paolo Perugino, I'm a captain. We have met at some events at the Monaco Yacht Club, and I love your work. Thank you very much. And yeah, remind me next time we meet. Actually, the name does ring a bell, because yeah, I have met you at I think we met at the Sustainable Yacht Summit, which was back in March. We've got the Sustainable Marina, the Smart Marina Summit coming up as well. Zara Jamal. Oh, what a great question. What would be the average sales cycle for yacht selling? Let's say 60 to 80 feet. Obviously, it varies. That goes without saying. If I had to put an average on it, I'd say 2 to 3, probably 3 years on average. Some people go remarkably fast. I'm always cautious to not give away anything confidential, so I'll try and keep this very vague. I met a yacht owner yesterday who I'd been in contact with 4 years ago. They had an 80-foot production yacht at the time, And in those 4 years, they've gone from an 80-foot to a 28-meter of a whole different type. So what's that, 28-meter? A little bit over 80-foot perhaps, but a whole different type of yacht, to a 106-foot yacht. And when I met them, they were on board their 140-foot yacht in 4 years. And they're looking at something considerably bigger to buy. So some people scoot through yacht purchases at an unbelievable rate of knots. I remember selling a Ferretti 96 to an individual who had bought a Ferretti 69, strangely enough, set foot on board, said, this was a mistake, this is way too small, and he bought a 96. And, one of the things that's interesting from having a YouTube channel is that I get a lot of comments from people who are not as close to the yachting industry, and sometimes they make quite cynical comments, but based on their experience. And when they see a yacht that's for sale, let's say a 2023 model, they say, what's wrong with this? There must be something wrong with this. Otherwise, why would you want to sell it? They don't understand that. They don't understand the world of people who are making maybe 20, 30 million a year, and they've got the house that they want. They've probably got 4 houses. They travel by private jet. Any car they want, they can buy. And they've got a car collection, watch collection. Clothes are not an issue. Eating out is not an issue. So what do they do with their money? They obviously, a lot of it's invested, but they'll buy a yacht, they'll use it, they'll go, you know what, maybe it's not the right one. They lose 2 million, but they're going to make 20 or 30 that year anyway. And there are a lot of people in the world making that kind of money, a lot. And so I understand from somebody watching YouTube who has a financially normal life, that seems inconceivable. But the truth is that a lot of people get through yachts very, very quickly. I'll just use this one other example and then we'll move on. But I sold once a Navetta 33, Custom Line Navetta 33. And the individual that had bought it hadn't bought it from me because I would have recommended that he ask a discount. He hadn't asked a discount. He paid full price. He slept on it once for one night, and he sold it, and he lost 4 million euros through depreciation, through the fact that he hadn't really understood the market and what he could have bought it for at that time. He sold it, moved on to a bigger yacht. So I would say if you had to put an average on it, I'd say every 3 years, but very difficult to really hone it down. Some people will keep the yacht for 20 years, others for 6 months. I feel like I've not given you a very satisfactory answer, but I told some good stories there. Eric Magolnik. I'm from Miami. Hi, Eric. I'll be in Miami all of October. Born and raised and have a large network. What do you think of the Miami market for yachts 70 foot plus? I think if I could be reincarnated, or if I could be reborn, I'd want to be a yacht broker in Miami in exactly that sector of the market. It is a fantastic sector of the market. There's a huge demand. There's a lot of wealth in Miami. You can have a fantastic lifestyle, really fantastic lifestyle. I think actually that the Miami lifestyle you have to be a little bit careful of, because it's easy to get sucked into the parties and the spending. You have to remember it is a business and you have to be business-like. And the successful yacht brokers that I know in the Miami area are able to make that distinction of, okay, now I'm going to go out and party, but in the day, it's to work hard, play hard, isn't it? You can certainly do both in Miami. I love the mentality of Miami buyers. They love life. They know how to enjoy their yachts. Some of them are very tough negotiators. I have a few clients in Miami who I love dealing with because they're just so full of life and enjoy using their yacht so much. And it's a big satisfaction. And when they make their decision, it's made and the money arrives and, we move on. Eric, honestly, it was Eric, wasn't it? Oh, yes, Rodrigo. You say, not sure why my name is coming up as Eric. Rodrigo, I envy you. Go for it. Ocean Man. want to make sure I haven't missed any. Oh, Nicola Desardo. Thank you, David. I'll be in Cannes next week from Friday to Sunday. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me, Nicola, on LinkedIn. I don't want to promise too many people, because sometimes the show gets away with me and I'm not able to meet up. But I will do my best. I'd love to meet anybody that's doing this webinar. Oceanman, do you see it ever getting easier to sell in Asia? Oh, that's another really good question. Seems to be a lot of wealth, but due to culture and marina size, it just don't seem to work. India, China, Japan, etc. Yeah, I do see it getting better. I do. I think it's going to be slow. China is the easiest one to answer. Japan and Hong Kong has a very healthy market there, and there are some quite successful yacht brokers and yacht dealers. China's interesting because the Chinese, it appears to me, are buying up very big brands. So Ferretti Group is owned, I think they're called Shandong Heavy Industries. They're, I think, 15% the Ferrari family, and it's still very much an Italian company run by Italians, managed by Italians, but mostly owned by the Chinese. But that hasn't led to a lot of Chinese people buying their yachts. San Lorenzo at one point had a big Chinese investment. Sunseeker is owned by Chinese, but they're not selling a lot of boats, to my knowledge, to Chinese. So I think we're some way before the Chinese really understand what yachting is about. But I believe, and the same with, well, India's a different thing. I'll come to India in a moment. But with Chinese, I think once they get it, once they start to go on a yacht and enjoy what it's all about, I think we'll see the floodgates open. That may not be for another 5 to 10 years. I don't know, but it's not happened yet. But it will. It's inevitable that it will happen, because as the Mercedes S-Class, when they came out with the new S-Class, the first market they introduced it to was China, because the Chinese are really starting to appreciate luxury and the luxury lifestyle and what they can do with it. So I think it will happen. India is another real interesting one. There's quite a few Indian yacht owners, actually. But I think the ocean around India is probably not too compatible with using a yacht. But that said, most people who live far away, they have private jets. They fly into wherever they want to fly into. They use yacht, and they fly back. And private jet travel does kind of change everything. I haven't been regularly on private jets, but I've been a few times on private jets, and it was an absolute eye-opener. If you live in Mumbai or somewhere and you've got access to a private jet, not only is it convenient, you kind of look forward to it, because you just get picked up. You don't go through security in the way that everybody else does. You go through, you have to, but you're straight through. There's no waiting, there's no nothing. You're literally out of your house, through the airport, onto the jet, take off, and away you go, and you've got a glass of champagne in your hand. So again, I think that the mentality of people who haven't experienced that is, why would they ever want to fly from Mumbai to Nice or to Palma? What a nuisance. Well, it only is if you have to wait 2 hours for the flight and queue up to get on the plane. If you've got a private jet, which a lot of the larger yacht owners do, it changes everything. So do I ever see it getting easier to sell in Asia? I do, but not for a little while. Zara Jamal, what's your point on direction of the yachts toward the electric or hybrid? Do you see any directions? Absolutely, I do. Tuesday of this week, I filmed a yacht called the Cialia, and I'm hoping to publish the video next week. Look out for it on the Yachts for Sale YouTube channel. It was amazing. Cialia is founded by one gentleman who's basically a structural engineer, but the other one owns one of the biggest factories in the world for batteries. And so he was fascinated as to why batteries aren't used more on boats and yachts. And so they developed this 57-foot yacht. It does 26 knots. We actually did 27 and a half on sea trials. And they hate the analogy with Tesla. because it's such a cheap, if you like, and an obvious analogy to make, and they don't want to do that. But it was just like a Tesla. I've never driven a Tesla, but I've been in many Teslas, and that delivery of power, the smoothness of the delivery of power, the lack of noise, but you can just hear something, was exactly the same. We got onto the plane so quickly, and it planed so well, that the industry has been slow adopters, but I think they will adopt it. In the long term, I see hydrogen fuel cell, and I'm not at all technically competent to comment on it. But when I look at companies like Lursen, who've worked with the German government and with some incredibly knowledgeable scientists and other organizations, when I see them coming up with hydrogen fuel cell, I have a lot of confidence in them as a company and in those that know a lot more than I do. So that's where I see it. You've corrected yourself. Sorry that every so often the questions suddenly slide down, so I need to slide them back up again. Corrections to all my question. Where do you see it in 5 years? I still see I see more electric yachts than we have today, but I still see traditional engines being used. I'm actually hoping next week to publish a vlog that I've made about HVO fuel, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil, and it cuts carbon emissions by 80%. It's absolutely amazing. And when I got talking, I was talking with the people from Ocean Co this week, and they said, we don't make a big song and dance about it, but our 2 most recent launches left with HVO fuel. There's no doubt that sustainability is going to be more and more a part of the yachting industry. And so that's going to be HVO fuel, electric, hydrogen fuel cell. For me, it's encouraging to see that the industry is looking at ways that they can become more sustainable and emit less greenhouse gases. They're going to have to do it. And that's basically what I foresee happening. Crystal M. Casanova, what a great name. Also in Miami, in charter business now, while learning broker side. Thank you for all the helpful info, David. Thank you, Crystal. And if I could go back in time, I think that is one of the routes I would have taken. So you've got everything there. You're on the Miami side, which I love Miami. It's really useful to be a charter broker. It's really useful because you develop such a relationship with your clients. You'll have clients, I'm sure, going back to you year after year to book their charter. And so many of those clients one day will say, I want to buy, it's time to buy a yacht. And you're so well positioned to benefit from that. So best of luck with that, Crystal. I'll be at the Fort Lauderdale show, by the way. So if any of the people from Miami would like to meet up, do get in touch. I go to the Fort Lauderdale show, but I always stay in Miami because I love the city. It's fantastic. Kimon Anglitos. Hi, David. I have a yachting business myself. I do charters, sales, etc. I've sent you a message through LinkedIn, but what is the best way to get in touch with you to do business together? I haven't seen a message unless it's come from a different name of person. That sometimes happens, that your profile on YouTube is not the same profile as you have on LinkedIn. But no, send me a message again on LinkedIn. I apologize if I haven't replied. I'm pretty good on replying to messages in LinkedIn. Sometimes it takes me a day or two, sometimes even a week, but I do get back to almost everybody. So feel free. I'll just put a little caveat on that. I'm fairly straight. I always try to be polite. If I don't see that we can do business together, I'll tell you. So please be aware of that. It's not always possible to do business for a whole number of reasons. I was going to say I will go into very, very quickly a whole number of reasons, including that I have a contract with Northrop & Johnson, which is a big brokerage company that doesn't allow me to do business of certain sorts. So I have to respect all of the agreements that I have. But if we can do business, and if it makes sense, let's see what we can do. Jordan Trushan, what are your predictions on market impact if and when there is a second round of something like the COVID pandemic? Jordan, I am the worst person in the world to give predictions. I get so much stuff wrong. when text messaging came out, whenever that was, years and years ago, I thought, what a stupid idea. If you have a telephone in your hand, who in the world is going to, because back then you used to have to press press 1 or 3 times to get to the letter C and so on. I thought, who is going to ever send text messages when you've got a telephone in your hand? You can just call people. That's how good I am at predicting the future. As we all know, text messaging now kind of took off. I was wrong about that. And COVID, I remember exactly where I was. I'll give you a little bit of personal information because it's past now and it doesn't hurt so much. My ex-wife and I had just decided to separate. We have a lovely, amicable relationship, but we just decided to go to see a lawyer to get it all written up. And we got back from the lawyer, and 2 days later, Italy was in shutdown. And we ended up being together for, I think it was at least 2 months we couldn't go out of the house. And because of the kind of people we are, we're able to laugh about it, and we laugh about it now, and it's all amicable. Why am I telling you? Oh, yes. So there I was in Italy. My office at the time, if you've ever watched my vlogs from 2 or 3 years ago, you'll know that I had a big bookcase behind me. I had a big picture on the wall with the layout of a yacht, a massive yacht. And that was the basement of my house, now my ex-wife's house in Italy. And I thought, this is the end of the industry. How can the yachting industry survive this? Especially as it went on, and it seemed like it would have no end. I was convinced it was the end of the industry. And as anybody on this webinar knows who's been involved with yacht sales, let me get this right because I'm terrible on dates, but basically 2 years ago was the best ever year for yacht sales. Figures were through the roof. Last year was excellent. We were expecting 2023 to slow down substantially, and I don't think I'm breaking any confidence in saying that I'm in one of the management at Northrop and Johnson, and we're having management meetings to sort of say, let's all be careful because the industry is probably not going to be as good as it has been, and let's not go crazy, spend too much. Here we are now in September. We've had a fantastic year this year as well. It wasn't as good as 2 years ago. So I'm the worst person in the world to ask for predictions. I have no idea. The logic tells me that if COVID Mark 1 led to a huge increase in yacht sales, if COVID comes back or something like it, maybe that will be equally good for the industry, but I could be completely wrong. It could be disastrous. But I love the question. Thanks for that. Sophia A, thank you for this webinar. Thank you, Sophia. Very valuable. Hope to see you in Cannes and Monaco, visiting a shipyard for educational purposes. Do you happen to know of any that are willing to educate students or interns? So shipyards are very, very open to yacht broker visits. Our company is organising one in Holland for, I think, October or November. And shipyards love that, to get yacht brokers and show them around. Interns, I honestly don't know. If I were you, Sophia, I don't know where you're based. Sophia sounds maybe Italian. Write to them and ask them. When I worked at CRN, we had quite a few interns come through, and actually one of them particularly, I think his name was Andrea, went on to work in the yachting industry. Write to everybody, write to everybody, write to all the shipyards, big and small. That's the best advice I can give you. But I doubt that you'll be able to just kind of write to them and say, do you mind if I visit and look around? Try. You never know. I don't feel like I gave you a very good answer there, but that's the best advice that I can give. Ocean Man, from my brief time in the industry, I've noticed clients can be quite flaky, even after LOI signature. What would you consider a good closing rate? You are so right. Clients can be very flaky. Really, a lot comes with experience. You get to see the signs of people who are serious and those who aren't. I don't know the context of the letters of intent that you've received, but I'll tell you my experience of letters of intent. They're a total waste of time, complete waste of time, because a letter of intent is a letter saying, I intend to buy this yacht, and they sign it, or they send it off. It means nothing at all. What means something is money, a transfer of funds. And in the case of brokerage yachts, there's already a well-established contract where they can put 10% down and they can get that 10% back. Now, why sign a letter of intent? If you really do intend to buy the yacht, sign the MEBA MOA, sign the EBA purchase and sale agreement and put your money down. And now I'll take you seriously. Usually a letter of, there are some circumstances under which a letter of intent is a good thing, but always accompanied with funds. So I'll give you an example. I intend to buy a 70-meter custom super yacht, but I don't know how much it's going to cost yet because the designs haven't been completed. So, Mr. Shipyard, here's 150,000 euros so that you can complete the design work and the engineering, and then we can talk about how much it will cost to build. But my letter of intent is I do intend to build it with you. There's 150,000 to get you started with the designs. And then a letter of intent makes sense. But generally speaking, in the world of brokerage, where you're selling a brokerage yacht, when I get sent by another broker a letter of intent for a brokerage yacht that I have for sale, I kind of feel like saying, what am I going to do with that? I can't hold the yacht. I can't take it off the market. Sign a contract and put your deposit down. You'll get it back if the sale doesn't go through after sea trial. That's my experienced opinion on that. Kimon Anglitos. Sorry, I better answer Ocean Man's question better than that first, because you say, what would you consider a good closing rate? It's not all about the flakiness of the client. It's also about whether the boat breaks down, which happens. It's also about whether you can come to an agreement on contracts. Good closing rate, 2 out of 3. Don't hold me to that, though. Kimon Anglitos also have a question. What are your thoughts on this year's yachting industry? I felt like this year it was a bit calmer than the previous year. It's a little bit calmer, but still a great time to be in the industry, a fantastic time to be in the industry. And something I like about the yacht brokerage industry is I feel that slowly, surely it's becoming more professional. It's becoming a more honorable industry to be in. I think that the amount of products out there are amazing. The shipyards are coming out with such exciting opportunities. There's new technologies coming into the marketplace. And I think as well that a lot of the builders have learned from the financial crash in 2008. A lot of them had overextended themselves and were building so many stock boats. They were so confident they'd sell them. And then all of a sudden, the world economy crashed, and there they were left with a shipyard they hadn't paid for, 30 yachts that were in construction not sold, another 30 yachts where the buyers were pulling out, and it was a calamity. Coming out of that, those large production yacht manufacturers have not made the same mistake again. They're not overextending themselves. They're far more responsible in only building what they know they've already sold, with a very few exceptions. So I don't see the yachting industry, and again, my predictions often go wrong, but I don't think the yachting industry has put itself in a situation that's so dangerous as it was in the past. So even if we have another major financial crash, I don't see shipyards like Ferretti Group that almost went completely bankrupt. And I lived at the time in the area where Ferretti had their shipyards, and I saw chains across the gates where workers couldn't go in because there was no money to pay them. It was an incredibly alarming time. Ferretti Group haven't put themselves in that situation now. They're in a far better financial standing now. And if they were to have a slowdown, a massive and dramatic slowdown of orders, they'd be able to cope with it a lot better now than they could. I use them as an example. There are plenty of other examples out there. And you have to remember that the great thing about being a yacht broker is that you represent buyers and sellers. So if there's a financial crash, people need to sell. If they need to sell, they need a broker to sell. If the industry goes up, they want to buy, and they need a broker to buy. So as long as you're smart with this, whatever the financial state of the world, you should be able to make a living if you're quick and if you're smart and if you work hard. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a bit calmer, but it's still fantastic. And not just here in Monaco, but we're hearing from Fort Lauderdale, from the States. It's still a very, very good and vibrant market. Kim and Angus, so I hope to hear from you soon. I'll send you a message again. Please do. Thank you for the very informative webinar today. Thank you. We've realized that our hour's up. Oh my goodness, that went so quickly. Patrick Abbas, back to KYC AML topic. A letter of intent is like toilet paper. Even if it's accompanied by proof of funds, it's still worthless until you verify the funds through a separate channel. I just want to say one other thing before we finish, because it's important. There's been a little bit of confusion between what the webinar is and what the masterclass is. The webinar it's a little bit like a little tender that can take you out to sea and sail you around a massive super yacht. And you can look at it and you say, do I want to go on that super yacht? Don't I want to go on it? The masterclass is the super yacht. You go in there and it's full of much more structured information that goes into much more deeper detail on topics. And my daughter is staying with me at the moment, and she was telling me that she's paid for an online course in a different topic, and it's quite expensive. And she showed me the online course, and I was so shocked by the shambolic way that it was presented. And it filled me with hope, actually, because I filmed all of the online courses last week. It was really intense, and I've now got them uploaded. The course itself, the masterclass itself, will be operative from this Monday the 11th. And as I was recording it and listening back to it, I thought, oh my goodness, I've done a good job here. This is really packed full of information. The information is very, very valid. Some modules are quite hard work, actually, because you go line by line through contracts and such like. But I'm able to give examples of why the various lines are important. I've used the experience of brokers who've become friends over the years to really put home some very important lessons in being a yacht broker. So the masterclass is the mothership. That's where you can really learn over a 9-week course all of the tools that you need to become a yacht broker. The masterclass is a something I'll do every couple of weeks, free, just to explain to you a little bit about yacht brokerage so that you can then make a decision if it's something that you want to do or not. I hope that clarifies that. Thank you all so much for attending. I'll do the same thing. I see there's a few more comments I haven't covered. So what I'll do is I'll cover them in the next webinar in a couple of weeks' time. And if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them too. So thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your attendance.